Well, thank you all for being here this evening. We'll see if anybody else comes in, but we're going to go ahead and essentially get started since we are a few minutes after the start of the hour. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kate Smith. I am the Organizations and Communities Manager at NGS. And I work with our organization members as part of my role. So I'm glad to see you all here. For those of you who may not be familiar with Org Connects, this is a Zoom event that we started last year. This is actually our fourth time having one. And these are Zoom meetings that are opportunities for NGS organization members to have more of their people come and participate and be a part of discussions and get information. Up until last year, most of our meetings were just for delegates. And so this is an opportunity for more people to engage and be a part of learning and sharing and getting ideas. Tonight, we have an hour to talk about taxes and finances for organizations, which for some people may sound kind of intimidating, but it doesn't have to be, and it's very important. So we're going to talk about a lot of things, very high level, lots of overviews on tax exemption and compliance, management and budgets, trying to prevent fraud and avoid scams, looking for how to find volunteers and professional help in dealing with financial things and taxes. And we'll also have some time at the end for you to ask questions and have some conversation and hopefully connect with each other a little bit. So a couple things before we get into the presentation, and I'll just see, Doug, if you want to go ahead and stop sharing.
You got it.
We will pull up. We do have a special event tomorrow evening for those of you who may not be aware. The NGS conference is coming up Memorial Day weekend, and we have a conference preview happening tomorrow night. So if you have any interest, we would love to see you there. We are going to have a special announcement. So if you have not signed up and you're free tomorrow, please join us. We'll put the link in the chat for you to register for that. We also have an organization member discount for the conference. So as organization members, you can have up to 3 people come to the Family History Conference at the discounted individual membership rate if those people are not already individual members of NGS. So there is a link we're putting in the chat for details about that. And there's a request form that we need to get by the 25th of April so that we can process those requests and get payments in before the conference. So please check that out if you or someone in your organization might be wanting to join us in Louisville. If they're not an individual member, that's a great way to save a little money. So we want to make sure you take advantage of that as a benefit of membership. One of the things we're also going to touch on tomorrow night is focus. Our theme for 2025 is a pathway to the future for genealogy and family history organizations. And this year that's going to be with the Filson Historical Society in Louisville. So we hope you'll also check that information out as well. It's a really unique opportunity for organizations to come together, learn together, share ideas, and really build up the community of organizations. And specifically this year, there's some great sessions that are going to get into things about just how to prepare for long-term sustainability and growth, and hopefully making you all successful for the long term. So with that, we will move into more about tonight's presentation. We will have some time for Q&A, like I said, toward the end. So as we go through the main session, note your questions. You can go ahead and put them in the chat and we will try to keep track of those. Otherwise, you can just make a note of them and then we'll get to those during the Q&A. We also just want to mention, kind of as a disclaimer, we are not your lawyer or your official financial advisor. So this is very much an overview. It is from someone with a lot of advice to offer from experience and professional background. as a CPA, but we do want to encourage you to find a qualified lawyer and financial expert, especially if you have a particular location that you're tied to, someone in your state, in your area, is going to be beneficial for you to have on call when you need them. So with that, I am very excited to welcome Doug Klein, who is the NGS board treasurer at the moment. And Doug is a great resource for NGS and for you. So we are thrilled that he can come tonight and talk about finance and taxes for organizations, challenges, and solutions. A little bit of background on Doug. He is a certified public accountant in the state of Ohio. He has been in accounting for over 35 years. He's been a CPA for 19. He's also worked for the IRS. He brings extensive experience to the nonprofit space and to you this evening. He has been on various boards over 25 years. He's been a treasurer, an audit committee chair, and various other roles. And he loves genealogy and has his own firm, PK Genealogy, doing genealogy, tax, and consulting, and has a long history of involvement in all kinds of organizations, including genealogy and family history organizations. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Doug. Doug, we are so glad you're here and willing to do this, and I will let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Kate. Thanks for having me, and thanks for that very nice introduction. So pleased and honored to be with all of you this evening. And I know this has been a while in the works. We've been thinking about this, and I've been very excited about it from the first time the idea came up that maybe the treasurer could offer some insights or whatever here and there. And as I started to learn more about NGS and our organizations, the most important group that we have are the supporting organizations and all the different entities that are involved in genealogy, not just individuals, have a lot of unique business questions and problems and things that they could need some help with. And so hopefully we'll give you some of that here tonight. So let me be sure I can get this slides moving forward. There we go. All right. So tonight's presentation, as Kate said, finance and taxes. I guess we'll start off and say taxes. Happy almost tax day. We're at just about, 5 days, right, until the taxes are due for most individuals and corporations, nonprofits. That's not exactly the situation there for tax filing. We'll talk about nonprofit taxes later on, but hopefully most of you, I know I was on some phone calls today helping people figure out some last minute tax questions that they had, and so I know it. Thanks for being here, and when you could be doing your taxes, you're here with me, so thanks for that. All right, on our agenda for tonight, as Kate mentioned, we're gonna cover some things. Wanted to keep the slides really kind of clean and kind of tight. We have about 35 minutes or so. We definitely want to make sure we have time for some Q&A and let you guys jump in and ask questions, and would like to field some of those live here, in this session. But where do you start? There's so many things that we could do. We have topics that people would really like to deep dive into, and I hope to do some of that, at a later date. And help folks out as much as I can. The NGS is here to support you. We're your NGS. We are the NGS all together. So the things that we do and we talk about, it's a moving target, So we'll talk about some high level stuff: tax exemptions, bank accounts, tax compliance, and things that you come into. You may think, well, we don't really have much tax compliance to do because we're just a small. We have to file a 990 card and that's it. But there's more to it for sure. Financial management. Wow, everybody has to, handle the money that comes in for their organization and pay the bills. We decided to put something in about security and fraud prevention, because that's a hot topic. People, entities, you have bank accounts that are either in your own personal name or they're in the name of an organization. And people are out there scouring the internet. They're looking at your websites, and they're figuring out who you are, and they try to steal the money from your organization. So I'm going to try to help you guys avoid some of that tonight. And then sort of the big catch-all umbrella as we move towards the Q&A will be organizational operations. That covers a lot. And I guess maybe that's, organizational management, kind of thing too. So a little bit slightly outside of finance and taxes, but you can't operate the organization without finances, but you have to operate, carefully. So, so let's get into tax exemptions and bank accounts. That's one of the most top level items, because it's really the first thing that you do when an organization forms. Maybe you have a newer organization that's formed. Maybe you're new in the treasurer role. Maybe you're new in the top level management team at your organization, and you're like, well, I don't know much about this. Talk to me. What do we do? Are we tax exempt? So one of the things that probably everybody on this call is aware of, except for some of the organizations that maybe, like umbrella organizations, perhaps libraries, or they're part of a historical society or a religious organization, and you might have a charter where you're operating underneath an exempt organizations. But all of us, the NGS included, are nonprofit organizations. You apply for that tax exemption with the IRS, and you'll use publication 4220 to just kind of get familiar with that. Even if you already have your tax exemption, just think about taking a look at that, and we'll throw this and some of the other links into the chat as we go along. There's a form you have to fill out, the 1023, which is the application for the tax exempt status. There's a fee that you have to pay, rather substantial, but the smaller organizations get a little bit of a break. I always consider when, people say, well, who can fill this thing out? Do you have your accountant do it? Do you have your CPA do it? Do you have a friends or family or someone who it's probably the latter rather than the former, because not a lot of organizations can afford to pay $1,200, $1,500, or even $500, which is what the fee used to be to hire a lawyer to do your exempt status. But as we'll talk about later in networking, it can get onerous trying to fill out all these forms and doing it on your own. So, it's always good advice to at least find somebody who is qualified to look over what you've done and be sure it looks good. And of course, we all know that, you should have, good governance, says you should have a charter and you should have some bylaws, and there are templates out there. There's lots of nonprofit societies that help you run your nonprofit. We'll talk about in the networking slide as well. What about bank accounts? Well, some people have, bank accounts that are in the name of the organization. Probably most, if not all, on this call probably do, because to the extent that you're a nonprofit, here's what your state law kind of says, that you have to, organize as a corporation in your state that's exempt from taxation, and you'll need a tax ID number because you have to file tax forms with that, right? The form 990 or 990 card, or an N card as we call it. So the way to do that is to apply for the tax ID number, and you do that with a publication 1635. And then ultimately the form SS4. The publication 1635 gives you insights into how to fill out the form. And throughout this presentation, I'll talk about forms and publications and give you links, because you don't want to just go straight to the form and start filling it in. There's always some really good information on the IRS website or the state websites that functionally help you, get through the lines on the return that you're filling out. Most state law, says that with corporations, and certainly nonprofits are one of those, right? Because they're state law entities, that all of your funds have to be deposited in the bank. So that doesn't mean 90% of them or 95%, that the expectation, would be that all the money goes into the bank account. And you do that also for some liability purposes as well. You want to not have, shadow entities or whatever. So, if you reimburse yourselves and do an expense report, that's all fine and dandy. But, run the expenses through the business, the corporation, and run the all the income, of course. And the other thing is that you may need the tax ID number for your investment accounts. And, let's cross our fingers or hope that some of your organizations and entities have some money squirreled away. And, wow, the stock market they're in, that's a whole nother topic, right? We can set that up as a conversation. What about investments? I'm also the finance chair for the NGS, and part of my umbrella responsibilities with that is the investment committee. So I guess technically I chair the finance committee as well. So we have to manage our money carefully and make sure that we're doing the right thing all the time and being good stewards of the funds. Okay, I mentioned umbrella entities, and what do we mean by that? It's essentially this is my quote, to be part of a sponsor organization is an important efficiency consideration. Utilizing expertise and resources that are in scarcity may trigger more mergers and consolidations post-COVID. Well, that's kind of a mouthful, but what it means is that a lot of nonprofits are looking at where they are and where they need to be and where they can or should be in the future, and taking, being very pragmatic about what's the best fit for limited resources and limited audiences, right? And so, we are seeing some situations where different organizations are deciding that they may want to be part of a nonprofit. The nonprofit may be part of one may want to be, in a for-profit. And so we are seeing economies of scale come into play where people are putting their money together. And I think, as you all know, we are the fortunate recipients and custodians of the FGS resources and assets, and what you guys are on, and so proud to to be your treasurer in that. Tax compliance and related considerations. All right, so let's talk about that just a bit here. So chiefly we're saying that the organization needs to address a lot of different things. Number one is they need to maintain their tax exempt status, and you can't do that if you fail to file your federal tax return for a nonprofit, a Form 990, or the card for 3 years in a row. You will automatically lose your tax exempt status and have to reapply and pay a new fee. And that's painful to think about or to work through. So it's one of those deadlines that you want to be sure that you get. And it's typically 4.5 months after the end of your fiscal year that Form 990 is due. For calendars, that's May 15th. You also have vendors licenses and sales tax. Shocking, surprising, right? That you could, in some cases, if you're selling stuff, if you have a footprint in another state, you may have to file sales tax reports. We are headquartered out of Virginia, but different state law applies. And for example, in Ohio, I know we have some folks that are on from Ohio, where I'm at, and we had to check into it. We found out that Ohio has a bright line test for sales tax for nonprofits, and it's different than what it is for the for-profit world. And so as long as we didn't have more than 7 days in the state of Ohio, and by the way, I'll be at the OGS with a booth in April 30th through May 2nd. Looking forward to see some of the Ohio and the people surrounding. I'll be there at the NGS booth. As long as we don't have more than 7 days in the state of Ohio, then we can sell our books there and we don't have to collect sales tax. But every state differs. You need to kind of check that. Payroll taxes, 1099s. We all probably know that if you have employees on the payroll in your organization, you've got to take the taxes out and file all that stuff. Don't forget 1099s. If you pay anybody over $600 throughout the year for employee services, or I'm sorry, non-employee services. So that would be non-employee compensation, Lawyers, you have to issue them 1099s if it's over $600. And I just make mention of that most states, including like here in Ohio, there's a portal. It's called the Ohio Business Gateway, and that's where you register to get your vendor's license, and you also pay your state taxes, and you can keep your charters up to date. You know, they're now for us here. I'm in Ohio. We don't have to do any of that. There, by the way, there are some states where you have to do some registration, and because nonprofits have to register in all states in which they solicit donations. So that's a whole nother topic, but I'm just kind of mentioning that. Don't forget, you know, if you solicit donations outside of your state, you may need to think about whether you have to register in those states for nonprofit compliance. Form 990T is a form that mostly your larger nonprofits, you know, can get into, and we'll throw a link in there, you know, for that as well, for where the form is and instructions. It probably won't apply to most, you know, to the extent that you have greater than $1,000 in unrelated business income, and that's going to be like your advertising income. You know, if you were advertising in a large, you know, like even our NGSQ, you know, to the extent that we would have more than $1,000 in advertising revenue from that, you know, we might have to file a Form 990T, and that threshold changes, you know, from time to time. So always just double check that. None of this is meant to be, you know, a set in stone kind of thing, like Kate was saying. You know, check with your tax advisors. And we also wanted to make mention of political and lobbying, you know, is something that's also addressed on the Form 990T, and that's a Schedule C. You know, that's something that we have to do, you know, with the NGS. So we have to be aware of that, because we do have an RPAC, and some of you may have been aware or even participated in it. Thank you if you did. We had the RPAC day, the day on Washington, where we were doing what we need to do to preserve the you know, where politically, you know, that we reserve our assets and our resources, particularly NARA, you know, that we can still have access to that kind of stuff, and further the missions for our organizations. Financial management, moving right along here. Just a 3 bullet point item for financials, budgets, and dues. Wow, this could be a full hour course, maybe a 2-hour course. So we'll slam through this part as fast as we can, but these are all big topics. Number one is financial statements, right? You have to keep books and records. You know, I think everybody knows that. Everybody who's a treasurer on this call, you know, you have to keep track of your income and your expenses, and you got to account to your constituents, you know, your board members and your members, right? That you've taken in all the income, and, you know, show them, you know, ultimately whether you know, where those financial statements are. The very simplest financial statements are going to just be an Excel spreadsheet. You know, it's up to you. Put it in Excel. Some people do QuickBooks, and I'll show probably that'll come a little bit later in the conversation tonight. Using QuickBooks is my favorite way to do it. That's what NGS does. We use QuickBooks, okay? Even a larger organization. I'm also a CPA in public practice for a very large nationwide accounting firm. And many of our very largest clients, you know, millions and millions of dollars in gross receipts, use QuickBooks. I'm not trying to sell QuickBooks, although a disclaimer, I did work for Intuit for a tax season, which is the parent company for QuickBooks and TurboTax. But, you know, you can do a lot of good things, you know, with keeping track of your income and your expenses and your financial statements. And GAAP is the word that kind of stands for generally accepted accounting principles. And that's, you know, that's when you have income that might be subject to audit, or you're presenting it and it's generally accepted accounting principles is what CPAs go by. We issue reports and we say, hey, the financial statements are okay and they're in accordance with GAAP. So you want to always try to strive for that, but don't stress over it like, well, do I need to record my prepaids and do I need to put the accrued expenses in? Possibly not if you're a smaller organization. We at NGS do that generally quarterly, and we do have an external audit that you guys may be aware of that we go through. An independent firm audits our books and issues an opinion letter. So we do all of our accruals and our prepaids, at least quarterly and definitely at the end of the year, at the end of the fiscal year. Establishing a budget and approving it, that's a key point, especially with times being tough or times being different, from one year to the next. Having a good sense of where the budget is really crucial. And dues and income sources, I kind of throw this in the category of marketing and just financial due diligence, right? We have to have income to operate our organizations, and the income can take a variety of sources. It isn't just member paying dues, right? It could be, like I say, advertising. It could be bake sale, revenues. It could be donations. That's what a nonprofit, can do. So you can solicit, for donors, to give money to your organization. And you can ask for requests, people to put, think about you guys in the time of their demise, and they can make sure that, they're remembered and part of a legacy. Okay, marketing and newsletters. I wanted to mention this because, where else can you try to generate some revenue or do some marketing, right? Social media, that's probably, I kind of looked around a little bit. I watch what's going on with the Ohio Society because I'm a member of that, proud member, and also member of my local Crawford County, Ohio, and also Summit County where I live. And they have really good social media websites where they're networking and getting their events. The other thing is to partner and network with your national and state societies. We definitely want to have a footprint, everywhere we can, because it's just better for our membership and keeping the finances going, right? And then mailers and newsletters, of course, probably everybody does that. Everybody gets a newsletter, a magazine, and that's where they keep in contact. But today's internet and today's social media, wow, I don't even really know some of the names of these social media websites like Reddit or whatever else they are. X, I don't use any of those myself, but I'm on Facebook. You guys can find me there. I mentioned fundraising events is another way to bring money in and soliciting contributions. I suggest thinking about, whoever it is, and maybe it's those on this call, right? Be your own development director, or find somebody who's really good at that and place them in that role. They need to actively consider going out and soliciting funds for the organization to keep it healthy and viable, into the future. Today's revenues are not tomorrow's revenues, very possibly. So, thinking about development, how do you keep that revenue coming in, right? Ask around who's good at marketing your organization. Probably somebody knows somebody that is really good at marketing, and they can take it on. I know, finding the volunteers, where do you get the volunteers? And people they're too busy and they don't have enough time and they're burned out, and they've been doing it for 10 years. I can tell you Crawford County, the same person was doing that for almost 20 years, and you got to be thinking about that transition plan and that next person. I'll go through this one fairly quickly because, conferences and cost containment doesn't really apply to everybody on this session that we're doing here. Not everybody has conferences or does events, but to the extent that you do, and Lauren, Lauren is on here. I know Lauren's going to chime in. we have conference chairs, we have conference committees, and we always want to be thinking about, to the extent that we're going to offer something expensive to our membership, how much do we charge for it? Do we charge for it? Is it free? Do we do it virtual? Do we do it in person? How are we going to handle that? You guys probably watch very carefully what we're doing. We watch very carefully what other organizations are doing too, and what the economy is doing. And but one thing to do is before you book your conferences, think about what if you have an in-person event and you lose money at it, right? You don't have near as many people attended that you thought were going to be there. And then the topic of virtual and blended, these seem to be very common, things to hear now, right? Virtual and blended and in person. I guess kind of what's the difference? Yes, you want to have physical contact, you want to have meals with folks, you want to meet them, you want to network, you want to talk, and the best way to do that's in person. You can't do it on Zoom, and nobody wants to sit on Zoom, for 4 days, right, or 3 days. But on the other hand, tremendous amount of learning can happen that way too. So don't discount it. Okay, security and fraud. I want to talk to you guys about what you can do to minimize financial scams. Some folks, you operate your organizations out of your home, right? You have an internet, I hope you don't have like a dial-up modem or whatever. I think we're not using dial-up modems, but you don't have an IT department, so we need to think about, making sure that to the extent that you can afford it, put in place important safety protocols like utilizing firewalls. If your internet service provider, your ISP, doesn't provide a firewall, think about changing. Whatever you got to do what you got to do. You need to have a robust router with a firewall. The email should have some built-in security and spam filters. Get some phishing filters in there so that that they can detect that you can use AI to sort out when emails are scams, and they just delete those before you even see them, because it's so easy to get pulled into one, and they change them all the time. Ransomware, probably everybody's heard about that, where they try to just lock down your ISP, your website, and they tell you have to pay a ransom in order to get it back. So that's why I say have a transition plan and a second person with access to all the data. Back everything up, make backups. So if you guys have a website and you haven't backed it up recently, go do that tomorrow. My recommendation. Okay, protecting employee and board member personal identifying information. That's important stuff too. Social security numbers, you have to be really careful that, you don't put those out there on the internet. You don't send emails back and forth to people with socials in it. Probably everybody kind of gets that. Payroll data, there's tax laws that say that you just have to do that. There are things that must be done. There are programs that are not secure, in doing that, like Excel and Word, so like sending an Excel spreadsheet with the payroll information to your accountant is not a good idea unless the accountant is using a secure server to transfer the files between the two of you. Keep your Form 990 secure. A lot of times that has, Social Security numbers in it, or it might, or at least your retained copy might. So, keep that stuff safe so it doesn't get stolen or, out on the internet somewhere. And then tax payments, a big suggestion for you if you're paying sales taxes or whatever, don't mail checks. Log on to your secure government websites, like the Ohio Business Gateway. All businesses, for the most part, that do business in Ohio should probably use that. You can still send checks, but not a good idea. If you send a check, someone can steal that. They got your routing information, they got your bank account number, and they can start stealing money if they get their hands on that check. If you pay it through the portals, that's a secure way to do it, and your bank account number will never be out there. Okay, organizational operations, finding a treasurer. Some people have asked me that. That's a big important, topic. Where do you find one? You know, hey, my wife is a treasurer also. She doesn't have an accounting degree or background in accounting, but like a lot of you on here, you may not be credentialed, you may not even have a big background, but it doesn't matter. It needs to be somebody who's passionate about keeping track of the income and the expenses, and telling people transparently, what's going on, and communicating well and keeping the records safe and secure. And hey, the most important thing, do the billing, bill the memberships and follow up on memberships that are expiring. That's a big important job of a treasurer. And always be looking for one. I'm always looking for, I suggest that we always do that as part of our, plan when we get on a nonprofit board. The first thing is, okay, how long am I going to do this, and who's my successor going to be? And we're definitely, looking at that here for myself as well. I'm in my second term. Bookkeeping, accounting, we talked about that. Simple solutions, just throw it all on a spreadsheet, get it all done, create a report and get it approved by the president or whoever, and you're done. Is an audit needed? Yes, an audit can be needed in the larger organizations that have a fair amount of money that's invested, and you have constituents that need you to be transparent and do that. Audits are expensive. You can pay thousands of dollars, for a certified public accounting firm to do your annual audit. We do that. We have to. The money that we have stewardship over requires that there's checks and balances on what I do, how I do it, how the president and the executive director, how they all interact, and we need a third-party firm to tell us that we did it all good. And by the way, we've had clean opinions, as far as I know, forever. So that's an important thing to do if you have to have an audit. Employees and subcontractors, we covered a lot of this before. There's W-2s, 1099s for over $600. Recommendation suggestion on 1099s, and you may run into these, like if you pay someone to come out and do honorariums or not honorariums, but you're going to pay them to come out. You pay them over $600, you got to issue a 1099 to them. So you should give them a form W-9, and the W-9 requests their tax ID number. They give that to you, and then you send the 1099 in January of the following year. But it's not for product purchases like books or whatever. And an important point, QuickBooks just started handling these directly in the software, so you can do your 1099s in QuickBooks. Lock, stock, and barrel. You can solicit the tax ID numbers from them on QuickBooks, and then you can enter that. Actually, I think your vendors can actually fill it out and send it back to you directly to your QuickBooks. You can review it, and then it'll issue your 1099s once you've got it all in and got it booked. Again, different states have, compliance checkpoints, that they do. Again, register with the state, to be sure that you're in compliance there, if you have employees or if you have a sales tax nexus. Retirement plans, not a lot, are going to be involved in these, but we do have a 401k plan or 403b. A lot of nonprofits have, and those are, plans where the employees can sock money away and they can get that later in retirement. There's accounting that has to be done for that. Usually that's done through a third-party provider, a TPA, and they do everything that they need to do, and you just kind of make sure that that's all done timely and that the Department of Labor, and the IRS are happy with, with your filings. Sometimes those 401k plans have to be audited, and that's usually done. The TPA usually provides making sure that happens, and your Form 5500s are filed with that. Experts, there are a lot of experts out there, probably in your communities, in your hometowns, where you can, be out there looking for people. think about lawyers, that that are in the community, um, community leaders of any sort, tap into them any way you can. Marketing, social media, we talked about that. Asking a CG, CGL to speak and getting involved. Hey, those little contacts that you have, they might come to your local society and they might say, hey, did you know that so-and-so, you know, um, I don't want to drop any names, but I was at the Akron Family History, and I was doing a lecture there, and another lecturer from Cincinnati was there, and I'd never met her before. And it was really great to um, to realize that the networking that we do there, might provide, you know, people and expertise that can help with your organization. Don't be afraid to ask. Nearby societies, we talked about that, and then state and national networking resources. They're all out there for you. And then if all else fails, use Google to try to get your answers. Now I'm going to give away one of my secrets that, as a practicing CPA, I use Google or whatever the search engine is, and they're all kind of AI driven now, to point me in the right direction. A lot of times I get my answer right straight from there, but maybe, have somebody, check that, hey, I looked up and Google says that this is the way to do sales tax in Ohio. Don't be afraid to call the state government and ask them, which is what I did with NGS for the Ohio situation I mentioned. I called the state of Ohio and they gave me that 7-day bright line rule, which I couldn't find on the internet. But, just tap into people who are good with that kind of stuff. If you're not real great with the internet and Googling, get somebody in your organization that can kind of be your right-hand person and do that. Okay, so I think I am right at our 45-minute time period here where we can open it up for Q&A, and just wanted to mention again that there's links that that have been in the chat or may be in the chat by now or will be, to all the forms and items that I mentioned, and happy to stop there, turn it back over to Kate, and see what anybody else has for questions.
Thank you so much, Doug. And hopefully you all can see that last slide there that was up for a second. Doug, I don't know if you want to put that back up just
I'll
for
put it
a
right back
second.
up. Yeah, you got it.
He is available at treasurer@ngsgenealogy.org. So obviously we're taking some questions here, but Doug is available. You can reach out if you do want to try to get in touch with him about anything. So we do want to make sure we have a few minutes here for questions. As Doug said, you are welcome to raise your hand in Zoom using the function in Zoom, and we will call on you. You can ask your question live, or you can put it in the chat. I do have one in the chat already. Doug, you were talking about the 7 days in Ohio. Somebody's asking about that in relationship to fundraising, if they have like a fundraising button on Facebook or a website, does that put you past the 7 days? Because that's up there all the time. I'm assuming though that what you were referring to was more sales as opposed to donations.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for that question on the chat there. Every state is going to be different. What Ohio told me is that it's only with respect to physical presence, in their state. There are some for-profit tax laws that come into play. There's a national for-profit Supreme Court case that pulls in essentially taxing the internet, but that does not necessarily or often apply to nonprofits. So what that means is that probably most states will tell you the same thing Ohio told me. They said, if you're soliciting donations via the internet and there's a donate button, that doesn't count. It's the days of presence, in their state. They don't want to have a sales tax return for all 50 states. And some of them have a bright line test on the dollar amount too. So it might be 7 days in Ohio, and it might be, say, $5,000. And that's what we call a de minimis rule. So there could be some states where it's a de minimis rule that comes into play. but you got to check each state. Probably your local state's the first one to check, and then if you have a conference, you know, of course, we always check that with the NGS when, you know, when we're in various different locations on whether we do or don't have to collect sales tax.
We also have a question about what if someone leaves your society money in their will, Diana? I don't know if there's anything specific you wanted to know with that, or just kind of generally what to think about and how to handle that.
I can address that generically. You know, so we haven't had a lot of that at the NGS, but we've had more in the last couple of years, and maybe it's just, you know, we're actively out there trying to solicit it and get it, you know, because it's important money to, you know, don't leave this money on the table, right? So you know, typically that you'd want them to leave you cash, right? You know, in their estate. It's not the best thing to have them say, "Hey, I want to give you my vacation property in Alaska," you know, because then you have to sell that, and then that becomes the burden on the society to do that. So cash is always best if they can leave you cash in their estate. You know, you would probably get in contact with their lawyers, you know, and we find out about it when people leave money, you know, to the NGS, and they contact us and say, "Hey, did you know that so and so passed away?" And, you know, so sorry to hear that. And in a lot of cases, we do know who that person is, and we're able to make quick follow-ups with that probate lawyer, and they move that money quickly out of the estate and over to NGS, and we take it in, and we're very pleased and happy to steward that money away into either our bank accounts for operations, or for longer term legacies, we put them in our investment accounts. Thanks. Great question.
Yeah, let me go to one live. Kim, you've got your hand up.
You're on mute. Hi, Kim.
Yeah, I know you Doug gets tell me I'm on mute once. All right. So I was just gonna chime in for Diana about this because our society was faced with that. We had a member that was doing their estate planning and had no heirs, according to them, and they had asked our society if there would be somebody willing to serve on our society as their administrator, and they were going to leave the entire estate valuation to us. And we, as a board, all of us discussed it and said, well, one, we don't feel comfortable handling that because there was real estate involved as well as personal estate on top of cash. And the other issue was we felt it was a conflict of interest for any of our board members to serve as an administrator where our own society was going to be the beneficiary. So we had recommended to the member if they could locate or at least identify, there are professionals out there that will administer estates. And we said, you might want to take that route. We would love to be your recipient, but you know, that we just don't feel we should manage that. So that might be something. Luckily, Diana, I see her, she said cash in their estate, which is obviously the most optimum thing. But if you ever get approached about anything more than that, we recommend what we talked about was have them hire a professional administrator. So
that's great. I can't add anything to that, Kim. That's terrific to hear and know. And yeah, sometimes the folks don't have. We have that come in too. You know, a family member contacts us and says, "Hey, did you know so and so passed away? There was no probate or anything. The money's going straight to the kiddos, except that there was an amount that's being delegated to NGS." So usually that's just a simple matter of asking them to cut the check, you know, to NGS for their share, and then that's easy to put that money in the bank. But when it gets messy, where you got to sell stuff, you know, you don't want to be in that conflict of interest scenario.
We do have a few more questions coming in the chat. And I will ask, we've got a few people sending them to me directly versus just putting them to everybody in the chat. And it might be helpful, I know, as we get close on time here, to allow, you know, if people have, you know, things that they can comment on in the chat, if any of you want to put your question in the chat for everybody, you know, then there may be some people who can chime in that way, in case we don't have time to get to all of these. Doug, I don't know if you saw, there's a question about the W-9 with an organization accepting an honorarium, and if a 1099 is expected to be issued to our organization for an honorarium of $750.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and I think that's from Gene. Thanks so much. Good question. Yeah, it's interesting. It's really the same thing whether it's called an honorarium or not. If you're giving the speaker some money to be there for your presentation, $750 is taxable income, to that person, even as an honorarium, right? So it would be over the $600 limit, and you would have to issue a 1099.
And then
Hi,
just
this
one
is Jean.
question
May I interject?
Please.
Thank you for that information. Actually, the tables are turned a little bit. We are the receiving end of the honorarium, our organization.
Oh, okay.
And,
Okay, I got you.
and the facility or the organization that we were participating in their event, they requested 1099. Excuse me, they requested an IRS Form W-9
W-9, yeah. Mhm.
to be
Yep.
completed. And I'm a new treasurer, so I just want to make sure I did it correctly. I submitted the W-9 as a C corporation because we are corporation.
That's right.
I didn't see an option to select 501c3 or nonprofit, and we provided all
Yeah.
the tax exempt documents.
Yeah.
And they in turn shared with us that they will not be issuing a 1099.
Yeah.
And just wanted to make sure that I did the right thing.
You did. Yeah, you did. That's exactly right. Thanks for clarifying that. On the other end of it, yes, people may send you W-9s, and most, if not all, nonprofits are organized as corporations in the state in which they're operating in. And so you'll fill out the W-9 with your name of your organization, the tax ID number, and you'll check the box for the corporation. And don't worry about whether it is or isn't, a box there, which there isn't, because I looked at the most recent version for nonprofit. It doesn't really matter for federal tax purposes. So then they will not issue you a 1099 if you're a corporation. So we nonprofits don't get 1099s. Yay, because we don't have to file taxes and pay them.
Thank you.
No, we are getting close on time here, so I know we may not be able to quite get to everything. I do want to just have you clarify, Doug. I had somebody message me about, none of their speakers have charged more than $600, so they are not filling out the 1099. Is that correct? Or do they, just to clarify, are they okay?
Yeah, so the rule is that it's more than $600 in a calendar year per recipient. So, you just want to keep track of who your speakers are, and to the extent they're under $600, you don't have to issue them a 1099. And if they're over, for the 12 calendar months, right, then you would issue them a 1099.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you saw the California question in the chat about the 33 1/3 test, talking about investments versus income, and any comments on how they are looking at that now, since they have an event that has not happened in a little while, and trying to rethink how they look at things and structure all that.
I don't know that I can help with California specific questions. Those would be something to just, reach out to somebody who's got a bit of experience or knowledge in California on nonprofits. Sorry, I can't help with that one.
We also had a question about things like Google Pay, Apple Pay, all the different cash apps.
Yep.
Ways to easily add that, especially because for groups trying to get younger members, those are ways they are increasingly looking to pay for things. There was a response in the chat about PayPal links can accept Venmo and Apple Pay. I know Lori just mentioned Zelle. I know a couple of people have used that before. So if anybody else wants to chime in the chat there, Doug, I don't know if you know of anything. I'm not aware of anywhere where you can necessarily add a lot of that kind of all together all at once. I think you have to add most of that separately, but I don't know if there's anything you'd want to say about that.
Yeah, the only thing would be, use your best judgment, because sometimes, $20 here, $25 there, you can't use some of these payment platforms commercially, without paying a fee, right? So you can PayPal money to friends and family. You can do the same thing with Venmo. You cannot do that, commercially, without setting up an account, a commercial account, for that. So I say to that, use your best judgment. And if you as treasurer, that's what you got to do, then, you get the PayPal money from so-and-so, move it over to your organization and be done with it.
One last question, and then we do need to move on to a couple other things and wrap up the meeting. There's a question about income from sales on Amazon. Does that income need to be included with sales tax and they just receive the profits, the tax is collected by Amazon? Anything you'd say about that?
Well, let's just use an assumption that, the things that are being sold on Amazon are society level assets or whatever. So you're just maybe selling off some items. To the extent that those things are used for your exempt purpose, then it's just income that you would record on the top line revenue, for the society, and then you take an expense for the fees that Amazon charges. If you're doing something that's not part of your exempt purpose, which would be unusual, but if it was, you might have to think about whether that's UBIT, the unrelated business income tax situation, and check with your local accounts on whether there's a threshold for that. But if you're just selling off books or inventory or things like that, Amazon would be no different than like we have PayPal that we use for NGS, and we just record the income that we sell our books on with PayPal, and it just goes into our income, and we take the PayPal fee as a deduction.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug. I am going to wrap up. We will be saving the chat though. And again, you can always email if there's something you want to ask specifically. Lauren, do you want to go ahead and run the poll? We do have a poll question we wanted to ask as a follow-up at the end of the program tonight. We are looking at other things where there might be some ongoing Zoom meetings or email discussions or different things that, as we plan out the future of what we provide to organization members, we'd love to know what you might want to see. So hopefully you can see the poll. We're curious about what topics may be of interest to you or other people in your organization that you might want to connect on with NGS and other organization members. And there's several options there, so hopefully we'll give everybody just a second longer to fill that out. A lot of interest so far in membership, leadership development, marketing, some interest in the specific society roles. All right, fantastic. We'll go ahead and Lauren, you can close that out. Thank you. That's helpful information. We're going to save those results. That'll be stuff that we factor into conversations we're having as we plan out things for the future. So thank you very much. If any of you want to leave comments in the chat before you head out tonight, just talking about why you picked what you picked, or even with this specifically, if you would like to see more and have more time to talk about some specific things related to finance and taxes, we would love to know that too. So feel free to leave those comments in the chat. And then as we wrap up here, I just wanted to put my email in the chat. Hopefully most of you, if not all of you, have it, but please email me if you have any questions or want to follow up on anything from tonight. I'm happy to help, just like Doug gave you his email earlier. So please never hesitate to reach out if we can be of assistance. And also just wanted to put in a little reminder for tomorrow night, sign up for the conference preview. We would love to see you there. I did see a question in the chat about tonight and if a recording will be available. We are recording, so we do plan to get the video on YouTube as soon as we can. So watch for that. If it's something that you want to go back through again, or if you have other people in your organization that you'd love to share this with. And then also just wanted to mention, you're welcome to save the chat. We had some links from Doug and some other things that might be helpful. So definitely feel free to save the chat before you leave the meeting tonight and make sure you get any of the information you need. And I think that's it. So Doug, thank you so much. Any final thoughts you want to share real quickly, and then we'll let everybody go.
No, thanks so much for having me, Kate. Really enjoyed it, and look forward to seeing folks real soon, both at Louisville and at Sandusky at the end of this month. So thanks again.
Awesome. Doug, well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And thank you to all of you who are on this evening. We really appreciate you making time tonight to do this and to get some information that hopefully is helpful to you and your organization. And we hope to see you tomorrow night. We hope to see some of you in Louisville at the NGS Family History Conference. And don't hesitate to email us if you need anything. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a great night. Thank you.